Good afternoon and welcome back again to another installment of The Making of Pottstown. And today we are excited and fortunate to talk a little bit with Mark Pollock, who was the founder and original really entrepreneur of the Pottstown Cable Television Company, which is known as PCTV. So Mark, welcome today. It's good to see you.
Good
Haven't
to
seen
see
you in a
you,
while.
Gary. It's been a while.
Been a while. So, Mark, just a little bit. I'm not sure everybody really knows your background. Where did you go to school, and your interests when you were growing up, etc.
Well, we'll start with the interests first. I remember when I was very young, my dad used to take home movies. And one day I got up the gumption to ask him, hey, let me do it. Let me try the camera, whatever. And from that point in time, I was hooked. And then I would make short films with my cousins or my friends or whatever, and that led to my interest in video and film production, and we went from there.
So you're a graduate of Pottstown High School.
I'm a graduate of St. Pius.
St. Pius. Oh, that's
school that no longer exists.
It does. It's now St. Aloysius.
Well, yes, but all the same.
So what year did you graduate?
69.
So 69. So then you went on to college?
I went to Lebanon Valley for 2 years, and then I transferred to Temple.
Okay.
Down in the city.
I have my Temple belt on today.
Oh yeah, cool.
2 graduates from there.
It still fits, huh? And yeah, I majored in film and video production down there.
The Klein School of Communication?
Yes.
Yes. So let's move on. 1969, you graduated from high school and you matriculated through college. And then after college, where did you find yourself?
I worked for a film company for several years in King of Prussia. And the owner of the company had his background was working at WCAU in Philadelphia, which was a CBS affiliate then. We did industrial films, did a lot of commercials. I did Tom Brookshire was on our board of directors. I shot several commercials with him, traveled around the country doing industrial films, things of that nature. We won a couple awards. And then from there, I made connections back with WCAU, and I was a film editor from there. Back then, they still used film rather than videotape now, and I was there for a couple years, and then I moved across the river to Channel 57, where I was there for a couple of years. But at that time, the ownership didn't really know that much about television.
Right.
I mean, the owner had hired somebody who was a teacher at Drexel to run the station. And at nighttime, they were pay TV, select TV. It was over-the-air pay TV. You got a box, put it in your home, and you get movies and stuff like that. But eventually that dried up. And they went all pay TV because, as I said, they didn't know how to run a station. And about that time, cable TV had come to Pottstown with suburban cable around 1980.
Okay.
And in 1983, I had been asked to be on the Cable Commission by Ed Scarbeck, who was the
Former
Borough
mayor.
Council president at the time.
Okay.
And so we had been asking Suburban where are our local channels, because in the franchise agreement with Suburban Cable, there was provision for 3 local channels. And Suburban just said, well, the channel's there, you're just not using it. Okay. So at that time, the borough had the right to whether or not to grant a rate increase to the cable company. They had to come to us for that. So we said, well, okay, we'll give you a rate increase if you give us some seed money to start our local channel. So when we got round to that, the school district heard about it, and they said, well, hey, how about putting a TV studio out at the high school? I said, okay. So we got a room for you. And And that's initially how it got started. The equipment we had back then was very elementary. I mean, we're talking VHS back then, which doesn't have the best quality in the world, as we all know, but that's what it was at the time.
So you bought, with this seed money, you bought equipment. You had a room at Pottstown High School, and you set up basically a studio.
Yes.
So what year was your first broadcast, and what was it? Do you remember?
Well, the first broadcast was, I was still working at Channel 57 at the time.
So this is what year? 1983?
82.
82, okay.
Where I borrowed some equipment and I went around and shot a bunch of stuff, and we threw it on. But in the fall of November of 83, in talking with Ed Scarbeck again, once we got the equipment, we were ready to go. So we started operating in November of 83 full time.
Okay.
It was just me at the time.
Right. So what does the infrastructure look like for a growing cable company, a public television growing cable company look like? And, you know,
well,
how does that take place?
Let me correct you. It's not cable company. It's local origination programming is what it was called, LOP.
Okay. So this is not public television in essence. It's a cable company that is giving you access to channels. Would that be,
Yes.
for the simplest terms?
Yeah, it was part of the franchise agreement that if a cable
Okay.
company wanted to come to Pottstown, they had to have.
And Suburban
local
Cable
channels.
is still the oversight company, or no?
No, Comcast bought Suburban out a long time
By that
ago.
time?
Oh, at that time it was Suburban Cable,
Okay.
Jerry Lenfest's company.
Okay, okay.
He just started by doing local programming, and at that time in the country, they were called public access channels. They weren't designed to make money, but somewhere along the line, at the end of 83 or 84, I was told that the station had to be self-supporting,
Right.
which means we had to either charge for programming and or charge for advertising, which just didn't exist in the United States. And as over the years I found out there was only 2 or 3 entire operations in the country that were operating like we were, where we were acting like a regular TV station, selling time,
Right.
advertising, things of that nature. And I think at one point in time, Suburban challenged us and said, no, you can't do that. But that's about all they did. They just challenged us, just life went on, and we just kept growing and growing and growing. And
So the borough council was your anchor agency, so to speak. That's where the cable company came through, and then you
Well-
became almost a separate entity, or really?
Well, there was a cable commission which oversaw
Okay.
the operation of the cable company as how it pertained to the borough of Pottstown.
Okay.
And then the cable commission would make recommendations to the borough council.
Okay. So you were involved a lot with the politics of
Oh, that
the
was
borough.
fun. Yeah, that was fun.
So maybe share with us some of the early accomplishments that you remember with PCTV and its growth, and some of the things that you look back on and you see now, almost 40 years later, that are still being kind of done from your perspective, that were, public meetings. I'm assuming would be something that you started.
We didn't do public meetings. Borough council did not want to be on TV
Oh, really?
back then for the longest time. And neither did the school board. The school board was more adamant about not doing public meetings back then.
How times
Obviously,
have
things
changed.
have changed, yes.
Right.
Everybody wants their moment in the sun now.
So how many homes did you reach in the the 83, 84 kind of first couple years?
In the first couple of years, I have no idea. other than the fact that we were in western Montgomery County. I mean, we were in Pottstown, the Pottsgroves and all that. And as the cable company grew, so did our reach. And eventually, in our heyday, when we had all 3 channels running, we reached from Phoenixville to Pennsburg, down to Bucktown, and just past Stowe, whatever. And in that area, we figured we reached about 300,000 people if everybody watched.
Right.
Interesting story. I remember watching on Channel 10 News one night that they were doing a report on Nielsen ratings, and they found a Nielsen family in Pottstown, and they were interviewing them. And while they were interviewing them, PCTV was on in the background.
Oh, really?
So at that point
That's
in time,
pretty funny.
using Nielsen numbers, like 1.1 million people were watching it.
Well, statistics can make you say anything. So your first couple years, you're starting infrastructure, equipment, maybe some statistics of, what year did you kind of retire from PCTV?
We're going already to there.
Yeah, well, no. I just wanted to get a scope of where you started.
30 years later.
30 years later, what did that look like from a standpoint of cameras, et cetera, servers, to where, trucks?
Well,
you started out with no trucks.
We grew from just a rinky-dink operation in the high school, in which we had some kids that were very interested in video production and all that. And
did you
they were
share
our cameramen.
students with
Yes.
the school?
Yeah, and I worked with the teacher out there who had a TV class.
Okay.
And at various times, they would come in the studio during the school day, and they would work on
That's too
mock
bad that
productions
that's
and all
lost.
But over the years we grew. We had 2 big production trucks. We had 3 vans. We had 5 full-timers and, anywhere from 6 to 10 part-timers that worked on primarily sports productions or remote productions, things of that nature.
So what was your budget from year 1, 2 to say year 5 to year 10?
What was my budget?
Well, what kind of,
Well, it
revenue?
grew obviously.
Right, yeah.
But the thing was, if you remember at the start, I said we had to be self-supporting.
Right.
So not only that, there was some point in time during the 80s, we were operating, I would put a budget in every year, and everybody was happy. And then I found out from, at the time, the borough finance manager was Brian Fike. And I had no idea how much money we were making for the borough, because whenever we would bill somebody for the borough, it would just go right to Borough Hall.
Okay.
We'd never see it.
Right.
Even though I had a company that was subcontracted by the borough because they did not want to add employees.
Right.
Okay. He told me that we made so much money that we added 2 extra policemen on the force.
Oh.
And they were ecstatic about that because that was money that they didn't have to get out of taxes and stuff like that. And from that point on, we were making them a lot of money. And they were very happy about it. So now the onus on, on us was that we had to perform every year. Now I got pressure on me.
Right. So throughout that time, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced? Obviously there's always a dollar amount, but what are some of the other challenges? I know you really expanded into, the sports market. That's,
we did that from the beginning.
And that's been
natural.
a tremendous asset. I think that has been one of the, what I think is one of the best things that PC has done is really showcased not only the athletes but concerts, et cetera, different venues for students to be, highlighted throughout the community.
High school sports and basketball, football, and all that. That was a natural, and that was a big money maker for us when we got started and all that. And that led into the heyday of Pottstown High School, when We were traveling all over the state during the PIAA playoffs.
Right.
They had those 3 years, 2 of which went to Hershey. One year they didn't, and then they were back. Those are fun times.
Yeah.
I mean, logistically they were a pain, but
Right.
it was exciting in so much that, going to Scranton or going up to Pottsville, up to Martz Hall,
Martz Hall.
Reading, and all the other places around the state. And it got to the point where when the season was over, and every Tuesday, Friday, and then nothing.
Right.
There's a big letdown, and everybody felt it. Everybody talked about it.
As a former athletic director, I loved that letdown.
I'm sure you did. But yes, but you still wanted your team to go as far.
Oh,
as
absolutely,
they could.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what was viewership at that time? Could you track viewership for specifically like even the Pottstown run when in the 92, 93?
It was word of mouth, but when we came back from Hershey after they won the state championship against Valley High School. We put the tape on and just put it on continuous loop. It ran all day long, one after another, and we heard thousands of comments about it.
Was that one of your
people
highlights
watched it.
in your career?
Going to Hershey? Yeah, that's the first one.
Right.
The second one, 2 years later, it was not as much fun because Service Electric was following a team up there, one of their teams, and they had all their cameras in prime positions.
Right.
And we could only use one camera. And we had to take a feed off of their coverage because they were doing it for PCN.
Right.
But we had one camera. So it wasn't ideal, but at least we were there and we had it documented.
Right. What are some of the other highlights you can think of throughout your career that kind of stand out that you
Bill
feel?
Clinton was here. We shot Bill Clinton when he was at the high school when Hillary was running way back when.
Right.
It was around, 2010 or whatever, somewhere around there.
So what's that look like, security-wise, for you? And
Oh yeah, Secret Service was all over the place, and they came in because our area, where our area was right next to the gym,
right.
and it was an entrance, so they had to come in and start asking a bunch of questions and stuff like that.
Right.
I think they had somebody there at the door the whole time, whatever.
You talked a little bit about, revenue, et cetera. How did sponsors and partnerships help drive and really maintain PCTV's presence in the area?
Well, the main thing was, back then, they kept coming back. I mean, we'd come around to them every year, with our package or whatever. And we went above and beyond that. The original package was just to do it during the games and stuff
Right.
like that. But once we got automated with our processors, we in between shows, we'd give them freebies throughout the year. So it was win-win.
Right.
And the fact that they kept coming back or whatever was, and we had very little turnover, is the best compliment you could receive.
Right. What are some of the bigger challenges like that were kind of external that you already knew about that you faced throughout the years? Was it competition from, you mentioned Service Electric. Was there is there competition from other places, or what are some of the other challenges that, really, I kind of always looked at it like this was more of a local, small market vision, but I kind of look at it now today and I see so many more, for lack of a better term, fingers in the pot all over the place of access to media.
Well, let's forget about right now, and we'll go back then. The Mercury, the sports department Sealy and the gang or whatever, they got used to us after a while, but the fact that after a game, we could go back and put the game on TV and people could see
So
what was happening.
You were
but
beating them to the punchline, so to speak.
so to speak. I mean, at least one game back then.
Right.
Eventually, it got to we did one game Tuesday, and then once we got 2 trucks, we did 2 different crews doing Thursday, Friday games, or a Friday game and a wrestling match on Saturday, whatever, because you can't spread your people too thin. They can't work night and day all the time, even though it seemed like that. 50, 60 hours a week were the norm. The radio station, they wanted to get their signal on when we had our computer on during the day or whatever. And we tried working with them on that. But the quality of the signal that we got over the telephone line was never that good.
Right.
And then they had their commercials on during the day. And so it wasn't really equitable back then. So we just went to something. We started making our own mixed tapes and started putting them on as the background during when the real estate show was on, the auto show was on, stuff like that.
Was real estate and the auto dealerships, were they your biggest kind of advertisers through those times? I remember seeing quite a few of them, and I always thought that was, I thought that was pretty informative that, that especially real estate, again, like
we had talked about it. It was in its infancy. And I went down, I was visiting my in-laws down in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Time Warner down there had the same thing. And I just sat there watching it and all that. And we couldn't really afford it right then and there, but as soon as we could, we did that. And the real estate was very profitable. The auto show did very well. And even at the time we had anybody else that wanted to do it.
Right.
You remember we had 3 channels.
Right.
So we had one channel that we had most of the real estate on, another channel we had the auto show on during the day, and another channel where we had anybody else.
Right.
And once we did that, revenues went up, and that helped us in the long run because you have to have so much in your budget every year. Electronic equipment maybe has a 3-year shelf life back then.
Right.
Well, not shelf life, but active life. And you had to constantly be working on equipment all the time.
So when you went out and pitched that, what were you pitching to them? You were pitching airtime, you were pitching a show to them?
Pitching to who?
To like sponsors. For example, somebody other, let's go to the third box, the other.
Well, the other was the half-hour shows.
Okay.
You go in there and do a half-hour show. Some people would call us. Some people we'd go out and solicit.
Okay.
Oh, geez, there were so many, Gary. Don't ask me to name them all.
They were informative.
There were
though.
some.
They were truly informative.
Well, I wound up doing thousands of interviews with people, and I used to say.
Now you're on the
I
other
used to
side
brag
of the
about.
desk.
I knew a little bit about everything, but not a lot about one thing.
Right.
So basically, you talk to them, you invite them in. What do you want to talk about? So basically, most of the time was, okay, I'm asking you questions, but I'm asking you questions what I want to know. So
Right.
So if I find out what your nonprofit group is doing or what you're trying to sell, whether it be mutual funds or whatever.
Right.
All right, talk to me. Okay, I want to know. And that's not 90% of the time. I felt that if you can convince me, you can convince the people, the audience,
right,
whatever, that you're giving them the information they want to get.
Well, I'm always a true believer that like self-reflection is a powerful tool. If you could self-reflect a little bit, that's right. I know you're getting up there in age, and self-reflection becomes more and more interesting. What are some of the things that you look back on that, I wish I would have done this, or I wish this would have been available, or how could we have changed the narrative a little bit with PCTV, or not at all? I mean, to be honest with you, I think PCTV has been a tremendous asset to the Tri-County area for many years. And really, and I'm not going to blow smoke, that's a reflection on your vision, your entrepreneurial spirit, and really your initiative, because I think it's been a very, it's been a very, very good crown jewel of this community for a long time.
Well, thank you. The only way I can answer that would be if you were with me in the car on the way home. To think about it right now, looking back, there's probably 1,000,001 things that I would do different. But there's no one particular thing that I can think of right now. Hindsight is always 20/20, obviously. The really thing that bugs me is all of the equipment and the capability that exists today, that if even we had 1% of that back then, it would be so much fun. The one thing is that comes to mind is the fact that it got to the point where we were almost like a factory.
Right.
We were just turning out show after show after show, and it just got to be, it was easy to find yourself in a rut, and there wasn't very many things that you could do creatively.
Right.
Except maybe with commercials or whatever. If somebody, I remember Andy Weisenborn with Pat's Beverage commercials. Go do what you want, something like that or whatever. And whenever we had a sponsor that gave you a little, freedom,
Right.
a little yard, then you take a mile.
Right. I always thought those real estate commercials, and I forget who it was, but he would jump in a pool.
Yeah.
I just thought they were so.
Jerry Musser.
Jerry
Musser, yes.
yeah.
I didn't mean to give him a plug, but I just thought they were tremendous. I always found myself, what's he going to do next?
Yeah. Well, I didn't shoot those commercials. Gus shot those commercials, so I'm sure Gus had a field day doing those.
So what's the difference, do you think, today? I mean, obviously the technology is completely different, but from when you started to today,
Well,
what's the big difference from what people see on TV?
we had three channels, and we had unique programming on all three channels. I think once the FCC reduced some rules regarding local programming with Comcast, and they moved us around. I can remember when we were on channel 4, 8, and 4, 11, and 54 back in those days. That was our heyday. But then they moved us to 22, 28, and 98. And all right, okay, we tried to adapt. But then things with Comcast and their working with us was like, pulling teeth after a while.
Because they got so big?
They got so big, and we were a thorn in their side because no one else in the system in this area had local channels.
Right.
Radnor had a local channel, but it was nowhere near what we were doing. But then the other thing is, once the internet came along, once all these other different avenues that you mentioned earlier came along, our power, if it would seem, our influence in the community started to wane, and we weren't bringing in as much money because of competition from that and all that. That didn't make Borough Council very happy at all. It didn't make my employees happy at all because I couldn't pay them the same amount, and it just got to a head where something had to happen. And at that time, around 12 years ago, I was about ready to retire at that point. Anyway, I'd put my 30 years in. And at that point, Gus took over, and he was, he was handcuffed too with the way the economy was at the time and everything else. So you knew with the way it was coming that PCTV wouldn't be the same as it once was.
Right.
But I'll give him a lot of kudos to the fact that he kept it going.
Right. What are the benefits of cable television, local cable programming? What are the benefits other than what you get to see local sports, et cetera? What are the benefits though for, people to tune into local cable television?
Well, just an example, take a financial show. Okay, here. You put an ad in the paper and it might cost you what, $200, $250 or whatever, okay? Or you go on the radio, but then, PAZ was in its dwindling days or whatever. It might cost you the same amount for a package. All right, so you have a little ad, whatever. I'll give you a half hour on TV
Right.
to reach 300,000 people, and it won't cost you that much.
Right.
That was the main benefit, I think, being able to be cost effective and letting people reach a lot of people, not just in Pottstown, the Pottsgroves, up to Pennsburg, Phoenixville, whatever, for a ridiculous amount of money,
Right.
whatever. And we were able to do that, and we were very successful at it.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You have to come up with an answer. What's your greatest thrill? Was it your first broadcast? What's your greatest thrill in your career at PCTV? Might be unusual. Might be the day you retired. I mean, there has to be one kind of thing that you remember that says, we made it. This is a dream come true.
Geez.
This is a vision that's been realized, et cetera, et cetera.
The first thing that comes to mind is the first state championship game out at Hershey with Pottstown, Gaming Valley. Other than that, I can't think of any one thing. Just being able to continue to grow and provide a service. I'd have to think about that. I'll tell you that on the ride home.
I'm not going with you. I'm going to play pickleball.
Good luck with your pickleball.
So are you completely retired now, or are you doing anything else?
You know what I've been doing? Since that time, since I retired, I've been making short films.
Oh, okay.
And I've been entering them in film festivals around the world. And I've been very fortunate to have many of them accepted. Just being accepted at a film festival was a thrill. Winning
What are
was
the
even
subject
greater.
matters of them? Are they all different, or?
Comedy, sci-fi, horror. I've been able to be fortunate to win in Germany, England, Los Angeles, Florida, and a few others that I can't remember at this point in time, but there've been
What's
quite a few.
the definition of a short film? Is there a less than an hour?
10 minutes or less.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Huh. That's very interesting. And how do you get into these? How do you, submit?
You come up with an idea, write it down, and then you get pull your teeth trying to get the right people to do it. I got a lot of them through LinkedIn.
Oh, really?
Actors, actresses, or whatever. You got to be careful. Some of them are professional, or Screen Actors Guild and all that. I've been a member of Screen Actors Guild
Oh, that's
for
interesting.
40 years. I was just in. Hint, hint. You remember Mayor of Eastwood was an HBO
Yes,
special last
yep.
year? Well, they did a sequel to
Winslet.
that with Mark Ruffalo called Task, which shot in our area from
Ruffalo
March
is
to
the Hulk.
August.
The Hulk, right?
So in June, in June I got a text from this talent agency in Philadelphia. Said, "Hey, you want to be a detective in Task?" So I said, "All right, okay, I'm not doing anything." So you go and do it, and we met up at Daniel Boone High School. You get up to Daniel Boone High School, and there's 50 trucks in the parking lot, and then they take us out to the old quarry, which nobody even knows it's there anymore
Right.
because it's been closed for 30 years because too many kids were drowned in it.
Right.
But they shot there, and I was a detective, and hopefully I kept inching my way in to get on camera. So we'll see. Do that.
Regular Sherlock Holmes?
The only thing was, 5:30 in the morning call, and then they don't get around to shooting you until like noontime.
Right.
And you're sitting around twiddling our thumbs and all that stuff with all the other extras.
Well, anything else you want to share with us today? Just that maybe was on your mind that we didn't cover?
Oh, I was thinking, coming over here about all the different things that you talk about, how PCTV involvement, talk about how Pottstown evolved. I mean, I remember going to films with my dad at the Strand Theater on High in Charlotte, which is J.C. Penney's now. I mean, he'd take me there to see war movies or whatever, which were boring, but whatever. I remember the Bar Arcade next door, across the street. So many things. I can remember the St. Clair Elementary School. Where was St. Clair? What the hell's that? That's down by St. John's Church in Mrs. Smith's on Charlotte Street.
Right.
So many old things like that. The big thing in Pottstown was Friday night. Friday night in Pottstown, wall-to-wall people.
Yep.
Before the malls, before anything else, wall-to-wall people. That was the place to be.
Yep.
Things like that. I don't know. I never anticipated that. I mean, when you're there and going to school, I'm figuring, okay, I'm going to go to West Coast and all that.
Right.
After college and all that stuff. But then, you realize more stuff with the information you get in college, whatever, that for me to go out to the West Coast, there would be 10,000 other Mark Pollocks out there trying to make it.
Right.
So I found my niche here. When I was working at WCAU, which was the CBS affiliate back then, there was when the pay channel started coming in, I had gotten an offer from Showtime in New York to go up to New York to be an editor up there, getting the movies, their sports specials, working on stuff like that. But then when they told me how much I was be making there, it was less than what I was making at WCAU. So I said, no, thank you.
Well, Mark, thank you. Thanks for starting PCTV. I think, again, I've always been a fan. I know some of us might have been a pain in your butt at times, and you could have been a pain in our butt sometimes. But
no. Most of the athletic directors were cool, except one. Oh yeah, my favorite.
Oh, you're not going to name
favorite,
that one.
One of my favorite athletic directors, right here at Pottstown.
Well,
yeah.
Try Dave Albright.
No, Ralph Merja.
Touche. Well, Mark, thank you. I appreciate it for you coming in, and again for all you've done for PCTV in the town. Thank you very much.
All right, Gary. Thank you.
Yep.